Let's talk to Mohammed Marandi, who is an Iranian-American academic. Many thanks for speaking to us on TRT World, Mohammed. This is a bombshell allegation by Turkey. Presumably, they would not make such a claim without firm proof that this journalist is dead.
Definitely. It's a serious statement made by the Turkish government, and therefore I don't think that they would say it unless they have great confidence. I've known Jamal for many years, and we've had serious differences. He, both in private and in public, we've been on television together, we've been at private conferences together, and we had serious differences, but he was always polite, unlike many of his Saudi and UAE colleagues who are usually very abusive towards me and people like me. He was, though, as I said, we had sharp differences, he was always polite, and it's extraordinary because he would defend Saudi Arabia better than any of these other Saudis. But more recently, he became more critical. He never became hostile, even towards Mohammed bin Salman. And I find it extraordinary that they could do this to him, and especially in Turkey, which is an insult to the Turkish people, to the country of Turkey. But I just can't understand why the regime would do this to him.
Well, that's the question. I mean, do you think it's feasible at all, given that he has been critical of the Saudi prince in a very public way, that he could have been killed by the Saudis over this?
You know, the criticisms were never the sort of, he never called for the overthrow of Mohammed bin Salman, and he even agreed with some of his reforms. He was critical of the fact that he accumulated all the power in his own hands, that he decreased the very little amount of freedom that there was in Saudi Arabia, but it wasn't as if he was anti-Saudi and also with taking into account his past, the amount of work that he's done to defend the Saud family is extraordinary. So it's just completely unjustifiable. As I said, when in private, whenever we had discussions, we were on the opposing side of the debate almost always. But he was polite, he was friendly. We were not close friends, but he was never abusive, he was never insulting. And I think this is a sign of something really terrible going on in Saudi Arabia, because the behavior of the Saudi regime is difficult to explain. They do what they've done to Qatar. They kidnap the Lebanese prime minister. They impose a siege on Qatar. They impose starvation on Yemen. They're hostile towards everyone. They supported the coup in Turkey. The media, the night of the coup, was celebrating more or less. Either Mohammed bin Salman has serious personal problems, or the people around him are not prepared to tell him that he's being a fool. His relationship with Canada, his admiration for the President of the United States, despite all his insults towards Saudi Arabia, and now this. It's just impossible to describe what's going on in Saudi Arabia.
Well, the United States have been one of the Saudis' strongest allies for some time, but Khashoggi was a resident in the U.S., at least for a period of time. How do you expect the U.S. to intervene, if at all, in this matter?
I'm not very optimistic. The Saudis and the Emiratis fund many of the think tanks in the United States. The think tank business in the United States has become very corrupt. I think first and foremost, these think tanks have to issue public statements. He was friends with many very senior officials and former officials in the United States. We'll have to see how the U.S. media reacts, think tanks, intellectuals, and the government. I'm sure there will be sharp criticism towards Saudi Arabia, but I don't think that the United States is going to change policy towards that country. I'm not optimistic. I do think that it will probably lead to, it will have severe consequences in public opinion with Turkish relations, and I think it's going to raise serious questions about the future of Saudi Arabia in the eyes of those who are following events in this region, because this is not sustainable. but I'm not optimistic about the likes of Trump.
Mohammed Marandi, very interesting to hear your thoughts speaking to us from Tehran.